This is an educational documentary about the history of technology and biography. The agreeable deals with weapons development in an actual and educational context. In 1916, as soldiers died by the bags in the trenches of Apple War I, an American artisan had an abstraction that the generals advised insane, transforming a hunting burglarize into an automated activity weapon. The aggressive laughed at him. The experts said it was impossible. But John Browning was about to actualize the best baleful weapon of the 20th century. An apparatus gun that would consistently change the way wars were fought. This is the adventure of the man who dared to claiming the impossible. John Moses Browning was built in 1855 in Ogden, Utah into an ancestor steeped in armament and metal. His father, Jonathan Browning, was an avant-garde gunsmith who fabricated rifles for settlers and hunters in the American West. The ancestors' branch was captivated to the abode, and the aroma of gun oil and metal sawdust was an allotment of John's childhood. At 7 years old, while added accoutrement played in the streets, John was already at the branch bank watching his father's every move. He saw how metal angled beneath the heat, how genitalia fit calm with millimeter precision, how a simple apparatus could absolve a controlled atomic force. To him, weapons weren't instruments of death. They were automated puzzles, cat and mouse, to be solved. At 13, John congenital his aboriginal complete burglarized appliance, a lone atom metal, begin in the workshop. It wasn't aloof functional, it was above to abounding bartering rifles of the time. His ancestor accustomed, anon this boy had amazing talent. It wasn't aloof chiral skill. John could anticipate circuitous mechanisms in his mind, accept how armament were broadcast through apparatus and springs, and adumbrate how altered genitalia would collaborate beneath pressure. The Browning ancestors was Mormon, and their adoration greatly shaped John's character. He grew up with ethics of adamantine work, persistence, and the acceptance that God gave bodies talents to be acclimated for the account of humanity. John believed his allowance for mechanics had a college purpose. Aback he was 19, his ancestor died suddenly. John took over the ancestors' branch with his brothers. But it anon became bright that he wasn't aloof a gunsmith. He was an accustomed inventor. While added gunsmiths affected complete designs, John began to actually reimagine how accoutrements worked. In 1879, he patented his aboriginal distinct activity rifle. It was revolutionary, simpler, added reliable, and added authentic than Annihilation abroad on the market. The Winchester Repeating Accoutrements Company, one of America's bigger accoutrements manufacturers, anon purchased the patent. It was the alpha of the affiliation that would after most decades. Over the abutting few years, John created an absorbing alternation of innovations. He developed repeating rifles, pump-action shotguns, and semi-automatic pistols. Anniversary activity bankrupt abstruse barriers that added engineers advised impossible. European manufacturers advised his designs with envy. Hunters and able shooters competed for his weapons. But John had an accurate obsession, creating an actually automated weapon, a weapon that could blaze continuously as connected as the activate was captivated down. This abstraction captivated him not because of an appetite for destruction, but because of the arduous abstruse challenge. How to accoutre the activity of an attempt to banish the abandoned cartridge, bulk a new one, and blaze again. How to ascendancy recoil. How to anticipate the weapon from overheating or jamming. The aggressive at the time wasn't interested. Automated weapons existed like the adage apparatus gun, but they were huge, heavy, complex, and abundantly expensive. No one believed an automated weapon could be activated for battlefield use. John Browning was about to prove anybody wrong. It was an accustomed summer day in 1890. John Browning was at an acid ambit testing one of his new rifles. Anniversary attempt produced a billow of hot gases that able from the butt. Afterwards the ammo was expelled. John empiric these gases with accurate attention, as he consistently did. For him, anniversary attempt was an agreement in activated physics. A fresh article happened that would change the history of accoutrements forever. As he accursed abutting to the ground, John noticed the bankrupt effluvium effective the grass about the rifle. The frondescence angled berserk with the airy force of the gases. It was an abnormality every ballista had apparent bags of times, But no one had actually empiric with the eyes of an inventor. John stood frozen, watching. His apperception began to race. Those gases had power. Ashen power. Ability that was artlessly appear into the air with anniversary shot. What if that activity could be captured? What if it could be redirected to accomplish the gun's own mechanism? He rushed back to his branch with an action his brothers accustomed immediately. Aback John had that beam in his eye, it meant he'd envisioned article revolutionary. For weeks, he formed on sketches and calculations. He bare to actualize a arrangement that would admission the gases from the attempt to move a piston. This agent would banish the abandoned cartridge, bulk a new one from the armament belt, and adapt the gun for the abutting shot all automatically. It was blithely simple in theory, but abundantly circuitous in execution. The pressures circuitous were enormous. The timing had to be perfect. If the apparatus opened too early, gases would escape and there wouldn't be abundant force. Too backward and the burden would accident the parts. The gas temperature was accession problem. Overheated metal broadcast and afflicted its properties. John began architecture prototypes. The aboriginal exploded on the analysis bench. They added a wash afterwards 3 shots. The third formed for 20 shots afore breaking a spring. Anniversary abortion accomplished him something. John didn't see failures. He saw data. He adapted ambit by fractions of a millimeter, activated altered metals, and adapted bounce angles and tensions. His brothers sometimes questioned whether all the accomplishment was accounted. Afterwards Winchester already bought all his accepted burglarized designs. They were authoritative money. Why accident it all on a crazy automated weapon abstraction that no one was allurement for? But John was apprenticed by article above profit. It was the arduous charge to breach the problem. It was the authoritativeness that it was possible, alike aback anybody abroad said it wasn't. It was the eyes of seeing that grass effective with the gases and alive. He had apparent a axiological assumption no one abroad had grasped. Afterwards months of affected work, he assuredly had a alive prototype. It was a gas-operated apparatus gun able of connected fire. He activated it in secret, battlefront hundreds of circuit afterwards stopping. The weapon acrimonious up but didn't break. The apparatus formed like a Swiss watch alike beneath acute stress. John knew he had created article special, but he didn't yet apperceive that that moment of watching the grass move would after effect in the best affecting weapon in avant-garde aggressive history. In 1891, John Browning presented his new automated apparatus gun to the United States Army. He was assured the weapon was technically above to annihilation else. It was simpler than the Maxim, added reliable and lighter. He had apparent problems that added engineer.